All right, in this Photoshop tutorial, we're going to be covering how to create an animal hybrid. Now, why you would want to do this, I honestly have no idea, but it's kind of a fun exercise and you'll learn some interesting tips and tricks about masking and matching to images, color, texture, a few things like that. So there's actually kind of an online community built around these things. I'll just show you a few samples here where people take two existing images of animals and they combine them together to create a hybrid animal. And of course you need to name your animal. So here's just a few little silly examples of some that I've found on the internet. Some people also like to use fruit to combine these things, but you can see you get some pretty interesting and, if nothing else, clever looking animal hybrids. So we're going to be taking a look at a few tips and tricks on how to create some of these animal hybrids inside of Photoshop. So here I am back in Photoshop, and you can kind of see with the idea what I'm going for. So I'm going to take two roughly spotted animals, and I'm going to try to make this giraffe appear on top of this Dalmatian. Now, these are the best two images I could find that were royalty free that I could use. So we'll make the best of this. Now, I haven't pre-recorded this at all, so this is actually the very first time I'm attempting this, so I'm going to do it sort of on the fly here. Now, what you want to do is the first step is you need to roughly get your sizing matched up. So what I like to do is I like to convert both of my layers. I like to get rid of the background layer, convert them both into smart object layers. And what this allows you to do is you can then resize the layers an infinite amount of times. I can resize and resize back down, and I'm not going to be losing quality. So what I like to do here is just make this guy semi-transparent. And all I'm doing here is just kind of roughly gauging size. Now this image right here is already at full 100% size, so I don't want to scale him up. Instead, I need to scale this guy down. So I'm going to resize this background image here and just kind of pull this down a little bit. And I'll kind of pull this up here. So I'm just going to try to match the neck size roughly to decide how long of a neck I want on my guy. And something right around there I think works pretty well. So we'll hit OK on this guy, and then I'll kind of move him back up here in the middle. I'm not going to worry about cropping everything out. Eventually I'll remove this hand and a few things like that. So let's now take this opacity back up to 100%. And what I need to do is I need to mask this guy out. So I'm going to double click this smart object to come into the smart object editing mode. Double click to get rid of the background here. And I'm just going to mask everything out so I'm left with nothing but the giraffe. So I'm just going to try to use a couple of different tools here to select out just the giraffe. Now I don't have a very, very busy background, so I can probably try to use the object select tool, or I may want to come in here and use the, inside of here and use the quick mask tool. I'm going to go for object select just to see how this does. So I'm just going to select all the way around the giraffe like so. And let go, and you can see that I actually did an incredible job of selecting around the giraffe there. Now there's a few little areas down here I need to clean up. You can see that didn't quite get is in there, and a little area up around here. But otherwise, very, very good job. So let's just hurry and clean that up. So I'm just going to switch over to quick mask mode and get my brush tool. Now I'm going to paint with black and white. Remember, black cuts out and white does the opposite. So I'm just going to kind of paint here with my brush, just to get a couple of these little quick areas that Photoshop didn't quite get. And it looks like there's a little area right up around here. I'll kind of try to brush this in. So I'm just going along here, and I'll just really quickly run along the edge here and grab a few of these areas. Some of this I'll be able to pull out in the next step when we refine our mask. But I'm just going to try to get a couple of these edges. And I'm, of course, doing a little more detail than I obviously need to do here. Then I notice down here you can see there's a little area along the chest that I'll kind of quickly pull out. I'm just holding down shift and clicking as I move down here to kind of get this to go in a straight line, and then kind of paint that out like so. Okay, that looks great. Now I'll switch out of quick mask mode, so Q or click that button, and then let's go ahead and refine this mask. So I'll get a marquee tool open. I'll select the refine and mask. Select the refine and mask button up at the top here. And then I'm going to switch my setting over here to overlay. So I like the view to be on overlay. And let's jump in here. And here's where we're going to use our target brush. So I'll come in here to the refine edge brush, And I'm just going to try to go really lightly around these corners to pull out some of that nice fine hair detail. So kind of around there, maybe a little teeny brush there in the lashes. Brush over there, quickly in the lashes. And then along the back, we're going to kind of brush several of these pieces out so we can try to get some of that hair detail from the mane here of the giraffe. It'll pull out a lot nicer. So I'm just using a brush here, going fairly quickly because I don't want to spend a ton of time on this process. You'll of course want to spend more time on your own. So that looks pretty good. And then let's go ahead and switch over to our black and white. You can see that got a lot of that detail is now, all that hair detail is getting pulled out pretty nicely. So that's looking pretty good to me. Maybe I'll take my smooth value and just bump it up just a tiny bit. That's about all I need to do there. So we'll go ahead and grab that. When I output here in the output settings, I'm going to output this as a layer mask. So I'll choose layer mask and go ahead and hit OK. So you can see that basically knocks out everything. Oh, that's strange. I'm not sure why this is not letting me save the smart object. Oh, probably because I have a mask. So I need to save it as a PSD or something like that. So I've converted here to a Photoshop document, and now when I save, it's not going to update the original smart object because of that error. So I've actually got to delete this, and then we'll go File, Place Embedded, and I'll place back that PSD version. So I'll go ahead and hit Place. Okay. There we go. So now I've got my smart object. Of course, if I double click my smart object, it takes me into that. And then, any changes I make in here will be updated. So I've got this, and now let's kind of zoom in here a little bit. And now we just got to try to place this. So I'm going to try to get a little bit. Now this dog's obviously kind of leaning back, but I don't want to free transform this giraffe and have him lean back. I don't really want to go that far. So I want to have him roughly having the same profile he currently has. So I'm going to take him and probably get him in right around there. So that his neck, I'm kind of looking right here. I want this neck right. He's going to be behind the handkerchief in a second. But pretty much right about somewhere in there. Now, if we kind of look at this profile line right here, I see a little bit of an issue, right? The back profile of the dog needs to match up with this profile here of the giraffe. So I've either got to increase my dog a little bit, which is maybe what I can do, or I've got to maybe pull this down so this line starts to match up there with that line. So maybe that'll be the easiest, to just kind of come down just a hair bit like that. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So now what I need to do is I need to mask out this area so it looks like my giraffe's neck's behind the handkerchief here. So I'm going to temporarily turn off the giraffe, and I'm just going to create a little bit of a mask here. So for this, I'm going to grab my Quick Select tool, and I'm just going to try to select basically the handkerchief. I don't know how well this will work. That didn't do that great. So let's kind of maybe a smaller brush there. I'm going to hold down Option to go into subtraction mode and try to subtract out a few of those pieces. And that's pretty close. Not bad right there. So that's good enough. Really, all I'm really worried about is this top edge right here. So now that I kind of have that in place, same thing. I'm going to switch over to the quick mask mode, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit. So I'll grab my brush tool and make sure I'm hit X on my keyboard to switch to black. And I'm going to get a little bit of a smaller brush and a fairly hard-edged brush. I use the keyboard shortcut with the bracket keys to increase and decrease the size, and then the shift bracket keys to adjust the hardness. And then I'm just going to go along here and really quickly clean that edge up. And I'll switch my color to the opposite color to white, and then I'll kind of trim that out because I want this to be pretty good line here, because this is going to help sell the entire effect. So I really want to take my time here and brush along this carefully. So I'm really zoomed in. That's fine. You can zoom in as close as you need just to try to get that top edge. Okay. Now that we have that top edge, whoops, looks like there's a couple little issues. I'm going to hurry and quickly take care of over here. Just brush that out. Brush that back in. It's kind of hard to see what of this is part of the neckerchief, but that looks pretty good. Somewhere around there. Okay. So I've got that thing selected. Now I can switch out of quick mask mode and I still have an active selection. So I'm going to come to this top layer now and create a mask with this selection. So I'm just going to simply click on my mask button here. And you can see it creates a selection around that. I, of course, want the opposite. So I can select on my mask here in my layers panel and I can invert my mask to essentially select the opposite. And now you can kind of see how that's looking there. So I've got a little bit of an issue here still that I need to work with. One issue obviously is that it's cut off right here. So I'm going to have to do a little work right there to try to blend that in. Then the other issue, of course, is my handkerchief isn't quite making it over around in the front. So let's go ahead and take care of the handkerchief issue first. Now there's kind of two options here. I can free transform and morph my giraffe to push him in, or I can do the opposite and pull the neckerchief out. I'm going to try to go with I'm going to try to pull the neckerchief out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to my dog layer. And let's just see if we can modify this quickly. So I'm going to grab a lasso tool. And now the problem, because this is a smart object, I'm not able to make transformations to it. So I will have to either rasterize this layer to make transformations to it. But we can do is we can go to the filter, we can come into liquify. And with the liquify filter, I can come in here. Now the problem here is I can't see the other layer, but with liquify, I can grab my push-pull tools, for example, and I can kind of do something like this. You can kind of see what that's doing there. And it's going to be a bit of a guess because I can't see where the giraffe lines up. So instead of just trying to guess, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little temporary mark here on this layer. So I'll just get my brush tool here. And, oh wait, I can't do a temporary mark because I'm on a smart object. I was going to try to draw a little line right here. I guess we'll just guess. We'll just go into, and we'll just guess. So let's liquify this again one more time. Zoom in here nice and tight. And let's just kind of pull this out a little bit, pull this over. And hit OK. So let's see how far that pulled it. Okay, so that did a pretty good job of getting mostly in front there. Now I just need to adjust this mask, right? Because this mask is incorrect now. So I can just get my brush tool, play around here a little bit with the mask. Whoops, wrong color. To kind of get all the way over there to that corner again. Okay, so that's pretty good as far as that goes. Now I'm just kind of cleaning this up a little bit again here really quickly like. Whoops, wrong color. Okay, so that's working okay. Now we need to take the giraffe and pull him in just a little bit. So we'll do the same thing over here on the giraffe. Whoops. We'll pull him in. So let's go liquefy him just a little bit and pull in this little bottom edge. So I'll get my pinch pull tool and kind of just pull that in slightly and hit OK. And that's getting me pretty close to where I need to be. So we'll just do one more slight pinch there to get in just a teeny bit more, and then we'll be done with that little piece. Maybe something like that. Okay, so he's got his neckerchief on. That's looking pretty good. So now let's go ahead and hide the giraffe here for a second, and let's get rid of the dog. So I'm going to come over here and we will create another mask on this layer. And on this mask, I'm just simply going to mask out the dog's head. So I'll just get my brush tool, switch over here to black, get a really big brush, and just kind of mask out the dog's head. In fact, better, you could do mask, but even better than doing the mask, you know, if I mask him out, I can then turn that on top. But even better than that, I'm going to undo these steps really quick. Let's just go ahead and do a content-aware fill. So I'm going to come into this smart object for the dog here, and I'm going to get rid of the hand. So let's go ahead and grab the lasso tool, and I'll just do a quick lasso around this hand, and then go Edit Fill, Shift F5, or you can do the content-aware fill. So I'm going to choose content-aware fill, and that's just basically going to get rid of that hand altogether, and hit OK. And then we're going to do the same thing for the dog's head. So I'm going to grab my lasso tool here, and you don't have to be very careful around these edges. We do have to be a little bit more careful when we get down to the neck. So I'm going to cut right in right here, and then come all the way over into this area. Now I can't get any of the neckerchief. That's very important here. So I'm going to get my lasso tool and I'll subtract out this little part. So I don't want to get too close to that line. Something around there should be fine. Okay. Then edit content-aware fill, and that will just get rid of that dog head. And that looks just fine. You can see there's a few little issues over here that I'm seeing some lines. So I can then get my spot healing brush and just kind of quickly paint over a few of these lines to maybe try to clean some of those up. And I can also go for my healing brush and just set a source right here and paint down. Whoops, I got to get a bigger brush. And paint down as well, and that'll kind of help blur it out a little bit. Just so we get rid of that little line over there. Oops, there's one area right up here I forgot, the little doggy treat. We'll grab that with this spot healing brush and get rid of that. Okay, so that's looking fairly good. We can adjust this in a minute, so let's go ahead and save. And then we'll jump back here to our hybrid. You can see that's now gone, so we can turn back on this layer, kind of see how that's looking. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now down here on the main, I'm just gonna kind of feather this out. So I'll come up here to this guy and back on my mask on my giraffe head. I'll just get a brush, and I'm gonna get a really, really tiny brush and just kind of feather out this edge, just so it's not so harsh. I might play around with this a little bit later. But for right now, I'm just gonna try to feather that edge out just a little bit. Okay, something like that, just so it's not so harsh. Okay, now we need to try to match some colors. So I've got my giraffe placed here on my Dalmatian. It's already looking fairly decent, but of course I want to try to make it look like the same color. So I'm actually going to be converting my giraffe into a black and white layer. So we can do that with an adjustment layer, and here's where you can really shift colors and do things like this. But I'm going to go up into my black and white and select that one. And then holding down Alt, you can also right click the layer and say create clipping mask. Hold down Alt and click right in between those two layers. And that will make it so that the black and white adjustment is only affecting my giraffe. Okay, so now you can see that these areas in here, I want to basically be white, like the Dalmatian's white. And these areas in here I want to be black. And right now they're kind of both just murky gray. So here's where we can come in and play around with some of these settings in our black and white filter to adjust those. And so really I'm just kind of guessing and checking. I'm just kind of dragging these to see how they affect it. So maybe we're going to pull up on the yellows. We'll probably definitely mess around with the yellows. Okay. So you're just going to play around with this until you're happy with some of your values. I don't think these will affect all that much because there's really not, these colors aren't really present in this very much. So it's mainly yellows and reds. Okay, so something like this. Now, of course, I'm still not close to white, right? So even if I crank this all the way to the left and I crank this one all the way to the right, I'm still not even close to this contrast. So now what I'm going to have to do is I need to really increase the contrast of this guy as well. So what we can do, there's a couple of ways we could do that, but I'm going to try to do it with layer adjustments again. So I'm going to go in and let's go ahead and set a curves. Actually, let's do levels first. So the levels command if we drag these two guys in, I can make the darks darker and the lights lighter. You can kind of see what that's doing there to try to get, to a closer match here. And this is kind of shifts like your gamma value. So I might want to take this and pull this in a little bit to try to get that a little bit wider. Maybe pull this one in a little bit. Then I'm going to probably want to come in and we can do let's see, the one here called exposure or even brightness contrast. So I may come into the brightness contrast and see if I can just brighten this image up. So that's kind of helping a little bit. Contrast, we can maybe crank contrast up. All of these things, right, are going to be affecting the black and whiteness there. Another one we could try is the actual exposure right here. So I can try to overexpose the photograph. The problem with all these right now is they're all compounding. So I can turn some of these off so I can just affect one at a time. So I'll leave black and white on, then I'll come over here to exposure, right? And we can kind of play around with exposure a little bit and see how that might affect it. Anyway, you'll just have to kind of experiment a little bit. I'm going to set this back to 0. So I'm going to overexpose just a little bit. We'll turn on brightness and contrast and just increase the contrast a little bit. Something like that. We don't want to lose too much detail in the face. Anyway, so just play around with these a little bit. I'm going to pause the video as I play around here to get a result that I like. Okay, now I've played around with this a little bit more. I'll just show you a couple of things I did. I didn't want to make this video go too long. So I'm going to call this guy good for right now. So this is my finished product. Now you can see what I've done is I've taken this pattern here in the neck and I've kind of continued that down into the back. And the way I did that is I simply just got a selection like this and just kind of got a piece like this, and I did copy merge. So I said edit, copy merged, Command-Shift-C, and then I went ahead and you can see if I paste that, I just get a brand new layer like that. So then I came into the smart object for the dog. So I came into here and I did my ContentAware Fill to get rid of a bunch of his dots. So I selected these dots and did ContentAware Fill to get rid of some of his dots and then saved that. And then what that allowed me to do is you can see that I've got this layer down here, which is where I copied this. And I just did a free transform and kind of scaled it up so that the squares are a little bit bigger there. And then placed it down over here in the bottom. And then just came in with the little mask tool here. You can see my masking where I've sort of hidden some areas. And I just kind of masked around a little bit to clean that up. So that just kind of helps sell the idea that the pattern of the giraffe continues down the back here of the dog. So that's one little change. And of course you can move this around as you need and kind of get it just where you want. I'm going to kind of place it right over here towards the edge. Something along those lines. Looks fine to me. So I did that change. And then the only other thing I did is I just kind of played around here with some of my colors. So on my maps here, my black and white, I added a little bit of mask. So I wanted a teeny bit of color back in the face. So I got a really light gray and kind of masked a little bit. So it's not pure black and white. There's still a little bit of a yellow in the nose and in the eyes area. And played around with a little bit of that. So anyway, you can see there's the finished product. So then what I'd want to do is I'd want to go ahead and crop down at this point. So I would crop down, however, I guess that's maybe a little tall. We'd crop down to whatever you want. Say edit to crop. And then of course, the very final step, image crop, is we need to name this critter. So we grab our text tool and pop up here. I don't know what we'll call this guy. I guess we better put this above everything else so we can actually see it. I don't know, Dalmatian, giraffe, a Germation. Germation. Whoops. So, there we go. There's your Germation. So, that's a little tutorial on how to create an animal hybrid. Definitely have fun with this, kind of play around a little bit, but I hope you learned a tip or trick along the way. And please like, subscribe, share the content, and we will see you in the next one.